know we're all exhausted from Father Brian's last video, so hopefully we'll be able to keep this one just a little shorter. I have seen movies that were shorter than question 2, so we'll try to do our best to keep this digestible. We're thankful to Father for that video. It was very good, and it really helped give clarity on what exactly it is that prudence is, which we can simply define as right reason and action. And we really got to see some real practical applications on just what that means, seeing our good friend Pee Wee Herman, of course. So today what we're going to do is take a look at why it is that prudence is called preeminent among, or charioteer of, the virtues. Preeminent means of the greatest importance, top dog, right? So what we're going to say is that prudence is the most important of all the virtues. And the question is going to be why that is. And moreover, why do we use the image of the charioteer to help us understand this? It was like, I don't know, watching like ESPN2 last week. Nothing was on a weeknight. And, you know, it was either like Frisbee on like ESPN2, but then I had some other sports thing going, which was like charioteer racing. It was kind of crazy. So I got to see the chariots. And it was sort of interesting to see, well, first of all, I felt like I was in ancient Rome, but it was sort of interesting to see the maneuvering or the mechanics of what it actually takes to run these horses, right? So what we're going to say is that what prudence is prudence is basically the guy pulling the reins, right? So the guy directing, the charioteer, what he's doing is he's in control of, he's pulling, he's orchestrating, he's moving, he's directing, he's steering, he's guiding, right, those horses. What we're going to say is that prudence is an intellectual virtue. I use my reason. And prudence brings about the movement of justice, fortitude, and temperance. So you can think of justice, fortitude, and temperance as those horses, and prudence as the charioteer, the driver, the guy who's guiding, steering, holding on tight, right? He's directing their movement. Okay? That's what prudence does. It crowns the virtues. Right? It gives the virtues their movement and their life. It's a conductor, right? Just think of Mr. Sylvia, right? When he likes to conduct things. You've seen him do this. When he's in the lunchroom, he likes to orchestrate what type of deli meats he's going to put on his sandwich, right? He conducts. This is what prudence does. It conducts justice. It conducts fortitude. It conducts temperance, right? It gives them life, it gives them movement, it gives them meaning because it brings them about. I know what to do and then I do it, right? So prudence is the charioteer of the virtues because it steers and it guides me in a direction to live a life that's reasonable, right? In other words, a reasonable life is a life in touch with the way things actually are, with reality. I'm living according to the truth. Right? And when I actually do this, I live well, I begin to flourish, my life begins to take off, right? I'm doing the good, and I'm living reasonably, and I'm living a happy life, a good life. So part of the reason prudence is the charioteer of the virtues is because it actually helps me to see that golden mean clearly. In other words, prudence helps me to see what's an excess of something, and then prudence helps me to see what would be a deficiency or a lack of something. So we started in the last video, the cowardly lion, right? So the cowardly lion, all right, you think of a coward who, you know, someone's drowning in a lake, right? And the guy knows how to swim, but he's just, you know, I'm too afraid, so I run away, even though I know how to swim. That would be a deficiency. An excess would be, I don't know how to swim and I jump into the deep end of a pool, right? Well, that's not smart either. So what prudence actually helps me to do is see what is the golden mean or the midpoint between the two extremes of this stuff of excess and this stuff of deficiency. Maybe I need to call the police. Maybe I need to throw them a life raft, right? Whatever it might be. Prudence helps me to see that. It's right reason in action. So the reason prudence is so important is because it guides the other virtues into real action. Without it, it flounders, right? Without prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude are ineffective because they're not brought into reality, right? So if I want to be just, if I want to give my neighbor her due, I first have to know what justice is, and then I have to do it, right? So if I know a person, let's say in math class, right, my teacher accused the kid next to me of cheating, and I know he didn't cheat. I know he didn't cheat. What I have to think about is, okay, what's justice here? And prudence helps me to see that. What is the best way for me to bring about the good? Should I tell the teacher? Should I tell the dean of academics? Should I tell my guidance counselor? Should I tell the kid, hey man, I got your back if you want to go tell the teacher that it wasn't you? Right? Whatever it might be, I don't just think it, I just don't know it. I then actually bring justice about. I actually go talk to the teacher. I actually go talk to the dean of academics, whatever it might be. Okay, and I actually give my neighbor his due by doing that. I just don't think it, I do it, right? So prudence helps to bring about justice. Prudence helps to bring about courage, right? I know whether or not I should go into a burning building if I'm a firefighter, right? So firefighters just don't randomly run into buildings, right? Structurally, they have to look, they know fires well, they study fires, they take counsel of the group, they take counsel from their chief. Is it safe for me to go in that building or not? Prudence steers that, guides that courageous act, right? Because it's only truly courageous if it corresponds to the truth or the way things actually are, right? So there's nothing courageous, right, about going into a situation foolhardily or recklessly. That's not courage. So prudence steers temperance to help me enjoy pleasure well, right? I want to go out with friends tonight to enjoy a game. I want to enjoy our company together, right? But I know that whenever I hang out with my friends and Joe starts drinking and Tom starts drinking and I start drinking, that, you know, when we're 10 beers deep, we just yell at each other the whole night and we fight for 3 weeks. Well, that's not reasonable. Why is it not reasonable? Because that's not what my goal was. My goal was to go and hang out with them, have a fun time, watch the game, not get into a fight for a month. Okay? So prudence actually helps me to bring about the enjoyment of pleasure as well, because it steers, it guides, it directs temperance. So the reason prudence is the charioteer of the virtues, the reason prudence steers and guides and directs and moves justice, temperance, and fortitude is because prudence helps to effectuate. Prudence helps to bring about virtuous actions. So let's give an example here. I want to give money to a charity. Let's say there was a hurricane. We'll go back to Hurricane Harvey a couple of years ago. I've seen this disaster. I've seen this destruction, and I want to do something about it. The first thing that prudence is going to be able to do as the charioteer and preeminent of the virtues is prudence is going to help me to set a path to effectuate or bring about that virtuous intention. In other words, what prudence helps me to do is take that good intention, wanting to help those affected by a hurricane, and it begins to set me on a path that takes the intention and moves it towards action, concrete action. It brings it about. So what I'm going to do is look into charities, right? In other words, I want to help Hurricane Harvey victims, right? I'm not just going to give $10 to a guy at Stop and Shop and say, hey, make sure that gets to the hurricane victims, right? That wouldn't actually bring about my good intention. So what prudence helps me to do is it actually gives me a path to walk. That way I can actually bring about the good intention. So what I would do is I would go online. I would probably use an organization like the Red Cross, who's reliable, who's reputable, who actually gives money to people who need it, right? In other words, I know that if I give $10, $100, that money is actually going to where I need it. So in other words, I have that virtuous inclination. I make a good practical decision by using the path that prudence sets me on so that my virtuous act actually happens. In other words, if I just give my $10 to a random guy at Stop and Shop or some guy with a bucket in the street saying it's going to Harvey victims, well, no, right? I'm not sure that that's actually going to happen. So to make sure that something is actually going to happen, I need it, right, to be a virtuous act so that I know it's going to happen. Prudence has the task of carrying out a virtuous intention, right? So I set a path, but I also have to know what's virtuous in the first place, right? So for instance, you go off to college, maybe your brother already has, your sister, and your parents drop off your brother at college, and your dad has to think to himself, what is the best way to bring about this virtuous intention to want to help my son, right? I want to help my son financially, but I also want him to learn the value of money. I want him to learn the value of hard work. I just don't want to spoil him and hand everything to him, right? So I need to determine the best way to bring about that good intention virtuously. I need to determine what's virtuous in the first place, and then I can set the path to bring it about. You know, I don't want him to have to work 40 hours a week, but I also don't want him to think that I'm a bank that he can just call up whenever he needs money. I want him to learn work. I want him to learn how to balance his own money. I want him to learn the importance of work in its relationship to living a good life. The third thing the virtue of prudence helps me to do, so it sets me on the path, it helps me to determine what's virtuous in the first place. The other thing prudence does as the charioteer of the virtues is it helps me to see the many commitments of my life, my many diverse commitments to my family life, to my social life, to my relationship with my girlfriend, to my relationship with my hockey team, to my relationship to my drama department, to my relationship with my academic life at school and my homework, to my relationship with fill-in favorite obligation here. And it gives me a balance. So prudence actually helps me to see the many diverse commitments of my life and to actually know what's virtuous, to set on the path that's virtuous, and then to do it virtuously where that balance can actually be achieved. So for instance, your buddies who are freshmen or sophomores in college right now, they're very intense for these next 2 weeks preparing for finals. So maybe what that means for them right now is those other commitments, going to play hockey, going to the gym, seeing friends, maybe those commitments have to be treated differently these next 2 weeks while they're getting ready for their finals. Sets the right path, helps me to determine what's virtuous in the first place, offers me a proper balance of life so that I can do my many diverse commitments well. Prudence helps me to see things rightly and then to do things well. I actually do it. I know it, I do it well. That's what prudence helps me to do as the charioteer of the virtues.